John, I was trained in neuroscience, and even so, I've always wondered, is there something beyond the physical that is needed to explain our consciousness? I am in a minority of people trained in neuroscientists who even are willing to entertain that question. Then, when you look at all different religions, you see a soul, an immortal soul, or something like that, some non physical element of the human
Yeah.
persona in virtually every single one. Now, oftentimes they have the structures that just seem so specific that are very, seems either silly or something that you would reject.
Yeah.
But is there some essence in the souls that we find in diverse religions which point to something behind them?
Well, soul is a word that I've always, not always, but latterly tried to avoid because I don't know what it means. I know what we mean by consciousness because I am conscious, but I can't define it. I mean, there are things that are so fundamental that we know what they are, but we can't define them. But so I know what I mean by consciousness. I know what I mean by continuing something that transcends consciousness, something that takes us from one life to another. But as to what a soul means, I just don't know.
So, without putting a definition on soul, can we say that there is something beyond the physical
Oh,
that will
yes.
never be explained by the physical, no matter how complete the project of science or neuroscience ever becomes?
Yeah, well, I believe so, yes, because I think that consciousness is, we can discover gradually more and more about its brain correlates, but correlation is not the same as identity. I mean, however fully you explain what is going on in the brain when we are conscious, that won't tell us what consciousness is. And I find that a number of neuroscientists, like Ramachandran, say that it is the ultimate mystery of neuroscience. We discover more and more about everything else, but we never discover any more about consciousness.
Some say that, but most say that with the progress of science, even though we can't answer it today, we probably will be able to explain it either by explaining away consciousness or by showing that when we have the extraordinary complexity of 100 billion neurons, each with 10,000 or more different connections, that level of complexity leads to things that we can't predict today. I mean, that's
Yes.
that's the argument.
But I don't find it very convincing because, well, first of all, it's no use referring to something that may be discovered in the future because we're not in the future, we're in the present. But you see, I mean, if you were to, if you're a neurosurgeon, you open up the brain, which you can look at and probe and discover correlations between. You can, I mean, the patient can be conscious, as you know, and can tell you what he or she is thinking. Well, suppose she is visualizing a scene consisting of a lake with mountains beyond it and a boat moving gradually across the lake. Now that is the mental picture that she is visualizing. And correlated with that, the neuroscientists can find, some massive connections of neurons. But no collection of neurons actually is that scene. That scene is of a different order altogether from the physical brain. So it seems to me that consciousness, including that kind of visualizing, just is not identical with the brain.
So then how then do you get from that concept of consciousness not being the same as the physical brain, how do you get from that to some variety of something that lives on beyond our death, that can go into the future in some way or another, some kind of of expression, of continuity of this non-physical stuff?
Well, it's one thing to insist on the reality of consciousness as non-physical, as I do. It would be another thing altogether to establish that consciousness goes beyond death.
Yes.
And I'm not sure that it does. I think that what does go beyond death and lives again is not consciousness and not the present conscious me, but something deeper within us, which you can, if you like, call the soul or the spirit or the Atman. But I would describe it as a fundamental dispositional structure, a sort of general attitude to life. And it is this that is born again.
Which has a non-physical
Yes.
essence to it.
Yes, but it is embodied again physically.
So it has to be embodied to be expressed, but
That's
it
right.
itself is
Yeah.
non-physical, or it couldn't make this transition.
That's right, yes.
So that sounds to me like a very weak version of the Christian soul, but closer to what Eastern religions might postulate.
Well, that's correct. It is, yes. It is much more a Hindu Buddhist than a Christian idea. Though you'll be surprised that in this country, in England, how many Christians in the pews, when they're asked, say yes, they do believe in reincarnation. Though they probably mean it in a much simpler form than the one I've just tried to describe.
And so this general presence in all major religions of this concept of something of our consciousness, either complete or partial, going on beyond death. How important is that to the fundamental essence of all religion?
Well, I think it is very important indeed when you think about the various aspects of the problem of evil, both moral evil and natural evil. There it becomes very important.
Why?
Because any person-making that is going on is not completed in this life, and therefore must continue